The great council chamber of the Galactic Alliance floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and light that had stood for 10,000 years. Inside, chaos ruled for the first time in recorded history. Representatives from 40 different species shouted over each other, their translation devices creating a terrible noise that echoed off the curved walls. Ambassador Talara of the Etheri people stood at her podium, her silver skin reflecting the emergency lights that flashed red throughout the chamber. She raised her 4 arms for silence, but no one listened. They were all too afraid. The Velkrath have taken the Corman system, someone shouted from across the chamber. That's 12 systems in 1 month, another voice cried. Out, we have lost 40% of our territory in 30 years, Talara said, her voice cutting through the noise with practiced authority. Our fleets are broken. Our worlds are burning. If we do not change our strategy, we will all be dead within 5 years. The chamber fell silent. 5 years. It was the first time anyone had said it out loud. Commander Korhath of the Kryn warrior clan stood, his massive frame covered in ceremonial armor that bore the scars of 100 battles. We have thrown everything at the Velkrath swarm. Our best ships, our finest warriors, they adapt to every weapon we use. Every tactic we try, they learn and counter within days. We are not losing because we are weak. We are losing because they are unkillable. Talara looked around the chamber at the desperate faces of her fellow council members, the Dulmar scientists with their multiple eyes full of fear, the Parathi traders who had lost their entire merchant fleet, the Zenith whose homeworld was now a breeding ground for Velkrath larvae. All of them were dying, slowly but surely. There is one option we have not tried, Talara said quietly. The chamber went silent. Everyone knew what she meant. No, said Council Prime Geron, the eldest of the Etheri. We will not ask them. They rejected us. They called us weak. They were right, Korhath said, his voice like grinding stone. We are weak. We fight with honor. We follow the old laws of war. We give quarter to our enemies and respect ceasefires. The Velkrath have no honor. Perhaps it is time we ask someone else who understands that. The humans are dangerous, Geron said. 50 years ago, when we offered them membership in this council, they refused. They said our rules would get them killed. They said we fought wars like children playing games. And here we are, Talara said, losing a war, playing by rules that our enemy does not follow. Pride will not save us, Council Prime. Only victory will. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, desperation won over pride. Talara was given permission to travel to Earth and beg for help from the species that had rejected the Galactic Alliance half a century ago. The journey to human space took 2 weeks. Talara's diplomatic ship, the Swift Wing, crossed the border into human territory and immediately detected by dozens of defense satellites. Within minutes, 6 human warships surrounded her vessel. They were ugly things, all hard angles and visible weapons, nothing like the smooth curves of Alliance ships. A human voice came over the communication system, speaking perfect Etheri. Ambassador Talara, you are cleared to proceed to Earth orbit. Please follow the designated flight path exactly. Any deviation will be considered hostile. Talara had never been threatened by an escort before. The humans did not trust easily. Earth was beautiful, a blue and green jewel floating in space, but Talara barely noticed it. She was focused on the massive orbital defense network that surrounded the planet like a metal shell, thousands of weapons platforms, hundreds of stations. It was the most militarized system she had ever seen, and these humans had been at peace for decades. She was brought to meet Admiral Chen in a military station that orbited above Earth's moon. The Admiral was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She did not offer the traditional Etheri greeting. She simply gestured to a chair and said, "Sit. Tell me why you're here." Talara explained everything. The Velkrath swarm, the losses, the desperation. When she finished, Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Let me understand this," the Admiral finally said. "You've been fighting this war for 30 years. You have technology more advanced than ours. You have more ships, more resources, more territory, and you're losing." "Yes," Talara said quietly. "And now you want us to save you. The same us that you rejected 50 years ago. The same us that you called barbaric and uncivilized because we didn't fight our wars according to your rules." "Yes," Talara said again. "We were wrong. We need your help." Admiral Chen stood and walked to a window that showed Earth below. "You know why we refused to join your alliance? It wasn't pride. It was survival. We've been fighting war since we lived in caves. We've nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. We learned something that you apparently never did. When someone wants to kill you, you don't fight fair. You fight to win. She turned back to Taylora. I need to speak with our leadership. Wait here. 3 days later, Admiral Chen returned with an answer. We'll help you. We're sending one of our warships to join your fleet. Taylora felt her hope collapse. One ship? Admiral, we need fleets. We need armies. One ship cannot possibly— What? One ship, Admiral Chen interrupted. The UCNS Indomitable, Captain Sarah Zhao commanding. She's the best we have. If one ship isn't enough, then 100 wouldn't be either. Taylora wanted to argue, but she saw something in Admiral Chen's eyes that stopped her. Confidence. Absolute, unshakable confidence. When can we leave? Taylora asked. The Indomitable is being prepared now. You'll depart in 2 days. I suggest you prepare yourself, Ambassador. Human military vessels are not like your ships, and Captain Zhao is not like your commanders. 2 days later, Taylora stood in the docking bay and saw the Indomitable for the first time. It was massive, larger than any Alliance warship she had ever seen, but it was also ugly, covered in thick armor plating and bristling with weapons. It looked like a beast, not a ship. As she walked up the boarding ramp, Taylora wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. One ship. One human ship crewed by a species that the Alliance had called too violent for civilized space. But as the Velkrath continued to consume the galaxy, one system at a time, Taylora realized that civilized space was dying. Perhaps it was time to try something uncivilized. Perhaps it was time to learn the human way of war. Captain Sarah Zhao stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the stars stream past as they traveled toward the war zone at faster-than-light speed. She was a tall woman with dark hair tied back in a simple knot, wearing a uniform that was clean but not ceremonial. Everything about her seemed practical, efficient, focused. Ambassador Taylora stood beside her, trying to understand the chaos that surrounded them. The human crew moved with purpose, but nothing like the ordered precision of Alliance vessels. They talked to each other constantly, sometimes arguing over decisions. They made jokes. They questioned orders and offered suggestions without being asked. It was completely unlike any military ship Taylora had ever seen. Ambassador, you look confused, Captain Zhao said without turning from the main display screen. Your crew, Taylora said carefully. They seem very informal. They're the best I've got, Zhao replied. Every person on this ship is here because they can think for themselves. I don't need people who follow orders blindly. I need people who can solve problems I haven't thought of yet. An alarm suddenly blared across the bridge. Red lights flashed. Crew members rushed to their stations. Taylora felt her heart's race with fear until she noticed that Captain Zhao hadn't moved. Neither had anyone else seemed particularly worried. Drill, someone called out from the weapons station. Drill, Zhao confirmed. Scenario 7. The Velkrath have boarded the ship through the cargo bay. You have 5 minutes, go. The crew exploded into action. They sealed bulkheads, routed security teams, prepared to vent sections of the ship into space. Taylora watched in horror as they discussed solutions that included setting fires, flooding compartments with poison gas, and deliberately decompressing entire decks. You would kill your own people? Taylora asked. Better than letting the Velkrath take the ship, Zhao said calmly. My crew knows that. They volunteer for assignments in sections that might need to be sacrificed. That's why we drill scenarios that will probably never happen. When the impossible occurs, we're already prepared. After the drill ended, Taylora joined Captain Zhao in her private office. The room was small and practical, with star charts covering every wall and a simple desk covered in data pads. You fight differently than we do, Taylora said. It was not a question. Yes, Zhao said, pouring 2 cups of a dark liquid she called coffee. The Alliance fights with rules, honor. Proportional response. You treat war like a sport with referees. We fight with civilization, Taylora said, feeling defensive. We do not become monsters to fight monsters. And that's why you're losing, Zhao said, but her voice was not unkind. The Velkrath adapt to patterns. They learn from every engagement. They expect you to fight the same way every time because that's what civilized species do. But we're not going to give them patterns. We're going to give them chaos. Over the next 2 weeks, Taylora began to understand what Captain Zhao meant. The crew trained constantly, but never the same way twice. One day they practiced fighting with the main power offline. The next day, they trained to operate the ship with only a skeleton crew. They ran scenarios where the captain was dead, where the weapons were destroyed, where half the ship was missing. "What are you preparing for?" Taylor asked after watching a particularly brutal training session. "Everything," Zhao said simply. "The Velkrath will do things we can't predict. So we practice being unpredictable ourselves." Finally, after 2 weeks of travel, they arrived at the Kessler Front, the last major defensive line between the Velkrath and the core Alliance worlds. The fleet that waited for them was massive. Hundreds of ships from a dozen different species, all organized in perfect formation. It was also dying. Taylor could see it in the scorch marks on the hulls, the patched repairs, the exhausted crews visible through the viewports. This fleet had been fighting for months without rest, slowly retreating, slowly dying. Fleet Commander Korhath contacted them immediately. His scarred face filled the main screen, and Taylor could see the doubt in his eyes when he looked at the single human ship. "One vessel," Korhath said slowly. "The Alliance sent you to beg for help, and the humans sent one vessel. That's all we need," Captain Zhao said confidently. "I have lost 60% of my fleet in 3 months, human. My warriors are the finest in the galaxy. My ships are armed with weapons that can crack planets, and we are losing. What makes you think one ship will make any difference?" "Because we don't fight the way you do," Zhao replied. "Commander, I need all your tactical data. Every engagement for the past year. Every weapon you've used, every strategy you've tried, every retreat you've made. That will take days to transmit," Korhath said. "Then we should start now," Zhao said. "And Commander, one more thing. When the Velkrath attack next, I need you to let me engage them my way. No interference, no backup unless I ask for it." "Can you do that?" Korhath was silent for a long moment. Finally he said, "You are either very brave or very foolish, human." "Probably both," Zhao said with a slight smile. "That's what makes us dangerous." The Velkrath did not make them wait long. 2 days later, sensors detected a scout fleet approaching. 20 bioships, each one a living creature bred for war, covered in natural armor and armed with acid-spitter organisms that could melt through metal. Korhath ordered his fleet into defensive formation. The Alliance ships formed perfect ranks, shields interlocking, weapons ready. It was a formation that had been used for thousands of years, refined and perfected by countless battles. Captain Zhao ordered the Indomitable to charge straight at the enemy, alone. "What are you doing?" Taylor gasped. "You'll be surrounded." "That's the idea," Zhao said calmly. "Weapons, prepare to cycle through all systems. Engineering, I want full power to engines and armor. Medical, prepare for casualties." The Indomitable accelerated, leaving the Alliance fleet behind. 20 Velkrath bioships turned toward the single human vessel like sharks sensing blood in water. They swarmed forward, surrounding the ship from all sides. The Velkrath opened fire with their acid spitters. Green streams of corrosive fluid struck the Indomitable's hull. Taylor watched in horror, waiting for the armor to melt away. It didn't. "Ceramic composite armor," Zhao explained calmly, "designed specifically to neutralize acid-based weapons. The outer layer absorbs the acid and breaks away, taking the damage with it. While the Velkrath fired uselessly at the ship's armor, the Indomitable returned fire with railguns. Solid metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds punched through 2 bioships before the Velkrath could react. Then, as Taylor watched in amazement, the human ship changed tactics. The railguns went silent. Plasma cannons emerged from hidden ports and began firing streams of superheated gas. 3 more Velkrath ships exploded. The remaining bioships began to adapt, growing thicker armor where the plasma hit them. So the humans switched weapons again. Nuclear-tipped missiles launched from vertical tubes. Laser arrays hidden in the hull activated and began cutting through organic armor. "You're changing weapons," Taylor said in wonder. "You're not giving them time to adapt." "Exactly," Zhao said. "And now for my favorite part. Helm, ramming speed." The Indomitable accelerated directly at the nearest Velkrath ship. At the last moment, it fired all its forward weapons at point-blank range, then smashed into the bioship like a hammer. The Velkrath vessel split in half. Small drones launched from the Indomitable's cargo bay, each one flying straight at a Velkrath ship before detonating. The drones were filled with high explosives and moved too fast for the bioships to shoot down. When the battle ended 10 minutes later, all 20 Velkrath ships were destroyed. The Indomitable drifted in space, its armor scorched and pitted but intact. The crew cheered. On the bridge, Taylora stared at Captain Zhao with a mixture of horror and awe. That was the most brutal, reckless, uncivilized display of combat I have ever witnessed. "Thank you," Zhao said, meaning it. "That's exactly what I was going for." Fleet Commander Korhath's face appeared on the screen. For a long moment, the Kryn warrior said nothing. Then slowly he bowed his head in respect. "Perhaps there is hope after all," he said quietly. Over the next 3 weeks, the Indomitable fought 12 more battles. Each time, Captain Zhao used completely different tactics. Sometimes she attacked aggressively. Sometimes she pretended to retreat, then ambushed the pursuing Velkrath. Sometimes she hid the ship in asteroid fields and struck from hiding. Sometimes she broadcast false signals that made one human ship look like 5 ships, confusing the enemy. The Velkrath could not adapt because there was nothing consistent to adapt to. Every engagement was unique, unpredictable, chaotic, and the humans were winning. But Taylora noticed something troubling. Captain Zhao spent every free moment studying the Velkrath, watching recordings of battles, analyzing their movements. She barely slept. Her crew began to worry about her. "What are you looking for?" Taylora asked one night, finding the captain alone in her office, surrounded by holographic displays of Velkrath attack patterns. "Their weakness," Zhao said, her eyes red from exhaustion. "Every enemy has one. The Velkrath are intelligent. They learn from every encounter. They remember every weapon used against them and develop defenses. That's what makes them so dangerous." "But you change tactics so they cannot adapt," Taylora said. "That works for now," Zhao agreed. "But eventually they'll learn to expect unpredictability. They'll develop defenses that work against everything. We need to end this war before that happens." Taylora moved closer to the displays. "You have found something." "Maybe," Zhao said slowly. "The Velkrath have perfect memory. They remember every tactic used against them and prepare for it. But what if we could use that against them? What if we could teach them false patterns deliberately?" "I do not understand." Captain Zhao stood and began pacing. "Watch this." She brought up a recording of a Velkrath fleet attacking an Alliance convoy. "See how they approach? They spread out to avoid concentrated fire because the Alliance always focuses their weapons. The Velkrath learned this, so they adapted." She brought up another recording. "Here they thickened their armor on the front because the Alliance always attacks head-on." "Another adaptation? But these adaptations make sense," Taylora said. "They learned from experience." "Exactly," Zhao said, her eyes bright with excitement. "They learned. They trust their experiences. So what if we gave them false experiences? What if we deliberately lost battles using predictable tactics, teaching them patterns that we could later exploit?" Taylora felt her blood run cold. "You want to lose battles on purpose? People would die." "People are already dying," Zhao said quietly. "Thousands die every day as the Velkrath advance. If we sacrifice a few hundred to save millions, isn't that worth it?" "This is madness," Taylora said. "Fleet Commander Korhath will never agree." But she was wrong. When Captain Zhao presented her plan to Korhath and the other Alliance commanders, there was shouting. There were accusations. Some called her a monster. But in the end, Korhath agreed. "We are dying slowly," the Kryn warrior said. "Every day we lose ships, territory, people. At least this plan offers hope. I will volunteer my ships for the deception." Over the next month, the combined fleet fought the Velkrath using predictable traditional Alliance tactics. They formed standard defensive formations. They retreated when outnumbered. They honored ceasefires when the enemy stopped firing. They fought by the rules and they lost battles. Not catastrophic defeats, but steady losses. Just enough to teach the Velkrath that the Alliance had gone back to their old ways. Just enough to make the enemy confident and predictable. All the while, the Indomitable was absent from these battles. Captain Zhao had taken her ship back to human space, claiming they needed repairs. But Taylora knew the truth. The humans were preparing for something big. When the Indomitable returned 5 weeks later, it looked different. New weapons had been installed. The hull had been modified. Even the reactor signature had changed. Whatever the humans had been building, it was unlike anything Taylora had seen before. Captain Zhao called a meeting with all senior Alliance commanders. Korhath, Taylora, and 20 other officers gathered in a secure conference room. "Intelligence has confirmed the location of the Velkrath Central Hive," Zhao announced, bringing up a star map. "It's here in the Zerath Nebula, 3 systems from this position. Every Velcrath organism in the galaxy is connected to a queen mind at the center of this hive. If we destroy her, the entire swarm will collapse. The Zareth Nebula is suicide, said a Dolmar admiral. We have sent 3 exploration fleets there. None returned. That's because they announced themselves, Zhao said. They used active sensors. They flew in formation. They did everything the Velcrath expected. We're going to do the opposite. She outlined her plan. While the Alliance fleet staged a massive offensive using the predictable tactics they had been teaching the Velcrath, the Indomitable would slip through the enemy lines. They would navigate the nebula using passive sensors only. They would fly alone, silent, invisible, and they would kill the Queen. This is insane, someone said. 1 ship against the entire Velcrath hive world? 2 ships, Korhath said suddenly. My flagship will accompany the Indomitable. If this human is brave enough to fly into death itself, then I will not let her go alone. Captain Zhao looked at the Kryn commander and nodded with respect. 2 ships, then. We leave in 3 days. Those 3 days passed too quickly. Taylora insisted on joining the mission, despite Captain Zhao's protests. If this fails, someone needs to witness it, the ambassador said. If it succeeds, someone needs to tell the story. The mission began with the largest battle of the war. The Alliance fleet, now reinforced with ships from across the galaxy, engaged a massive Velcrath armada. It was all for show, a distraction, but thousands would die to create it. While the fleets clashed, the Indomitable and Korhath's flagship, the Honor's Blade, slipped away. They moved slowly, using minimal power, hiding their signatures among the debris of destroyed ships. They drifted like ghosts toward the Zareth Nebula. The nebula itself was beautiful and terrifying. Purple and red clouds of gas swirled through space, lit from within by dying stars. The clouds interfered with sensors, making navigation nearly impossible. But Captain Zhao had planned for this. The humans navigated by dead reckoning, using gravity measurements and careful calculations. As they moved deeper into the nebula, they began to see signs of the Velcrath presence. Asteroids that had been hollowed out and filled with larvae. Bioships grown directly from space debris. Entire moons that had been consumed and converted into breeding grounds. How many of them are there? Taylora whispered. Billions, Zhao said quietly. Maybe trillions. The Queen has been breeding for decades, preparing for total galactic conquest. The crew began to hear sounds. At first, Taylora thought she was imagining it, a faint whispering at the edge of hearing. But others heard it too. The Queen's mental presence was so powerful that even non-telepathic species could sense her. She knows we're here, Korhath said over the communication link. She's trying to get inside our minds. Keep focused, Zhao ordered. We're almost there. And then they saw it. The Queen World, a planet that had once been green and blue, now completely covered in a living carpet of Velcrath organisms. The surface writhed and pulsed. Billions of creatures moved across it like cells in a vast body, and at the center, barely visible through the atmosphere, was something massive. The Queen herself, grown to impossible size. How do we fight that? Taylora asked, feeling hopelessness wash over her. Captain Zhao smiled. It was not a nice smile. We cheat. She activated the new weapon the humans had installed. The Indomitable began broadcasting a signal, a perfect imitation of a Velcrath distress call. It was the same pattern the Alliance had been using in their fake battles for the past month. The Velcrath had learned to recognize it, and they fell for it. The planetary defenses parted. Bioships moved aside to let the wounded vessel through. The Velcrath Queen, confident in her adaptation, lowered her shields to retrieve what she thought was one of her damaged children. It was the last mistake she would ever make. All weapons, Captain Zhao said softly. Fire. The Indomitable and the Honor's Blade opened fire with everything they had. Nuclear missiles streaked toward the planet's surface. Plasma cannons burned holes through the living atmosphere. Railguns fired solid slugs that punched through layers of organic armor like bullets through paper. But the Queen World was vast beyond imagination. The 2 ships were like insects attacking a mountain. For every Velcrath organism they killed, 1,000 more took its place. The living planet began to fight back. Bioships swarmed from hidden caverns in the planet's crust. Acid spitters larger than buildings rose from the surface and fired at the attacking vessels. The atmosphere itself seemed to reach up toward them like grasping fingers made of living tissue. We can't do enough damage from up here, Korhath said over the communication link. "We need to get closer." "Agreed," Captain Zhao said. "We're going in. Full burn toward the largest structure on the surface. That's where the Queen will be." The two ships dove toward the planet, engines screaming, weapons firing continuously. The Velkrath defenses tore into them. The Honor's blade lost its port shields. The Indomitable's armor began to peel away under concentrated acid fire. But they kept going, plunging through the atmosphere like meteors. Taylora watched the main display screen as they descended through clouds made of spores and past flying organisms the size of cities. She could see the surface now, a nightmare landscape of pulsing flesh and chitinous structures, and at the center, rising like a twisted mountain, was the Queen's chamber. "Landing in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. "This is going to be rough." Rough was an understatement. The Indomitable crashed into the surface with enough force to crack its keel. The Honor's blade landed beside it, one of its engines completely destroyed. Alarms screamed throughout both ships. Emergency lights flickered. "Damage report," Zhao snapped. "Port engine offline. Weapons at 40%. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7. "We're not flying out of here, Captain." Zhao nodded as if she had expected this. "Then we complete the mission on foot." "Korhath, are you receiving?" The Kryn commander's face appeared on screen. His ship had fared even worse. "We're alive. Barely. My warriors are ready to fight." "Good," Zhao said. She turned to her crew. "This is a one-way mission. Anyone who wants to stay with the ship, I won't think less of you." Not a single person moved to stay behind. The boarding party assembled in the cargo bay. 50 humans in combat armor, their weapons loaded with ammunition designed specifically for organic targets. 20 Kryn warriors, each one a veteran of 100 battles carrying energy weapons and ceremonial blades. And Taylora, insisting on coming despite having no combat training. "Why are you here?" Captain Zhao asked her quietly. "Because someone must witness this," Taylora said. "Whatever happens, the galaxy must know what was done here today." The cargo door opened. The surface of the Queen world stretched before them, a living nightmare. The ground itself was made of flesh that moved and pulsed. The air was thick with spores that made breathing difficult even through filters. And everywhere, Velkrath organisms turned toward them. The battle that followed was like nothing Taylora had ever seen. The humans and Kryn fought side by side, moving through the hellish landscape toward the Queen's chamber. They used flamethrowers to burn through walls of living tissue. They threw grenades that exploded with phosphorus, creating fires that even the Velkrath's regeneration could not heal. They fought without mercy because the Velkrath gave none. Korhath led his warriors with the fury of a god. His energy blade cut through Velkrath organisms like they were made of paper. He roared challenges in his own language, daring the enemy to face him. When a massive guardian organism blocked their path, Korhath charged it alone and brought it down. But the Velkrath were infinite. For everyone they killed, 10 more appeared. The boarding party was being worn down. They lost people with every step forward. A young human soldier was pulled into the living ground and disappeared before anyone could save him. 3 Kryn warriors were overwhelmed by a swarm of smaller organisms and died fighting back to back. They were halfway to the Queen's chamber when Captain Zhao activated her final weapon. She had been carrying a container on her back, heavy and sealed. Now she opened it and released its contents into the air. "Biological weapon," she announced calmly. "Engineered virus designed to attack Velkrath neural tissue. Airborne. It will spread through the hive within hours." Taylora felt horror wash over her. "You brought a plague? This is forbidden by every law of civilized warfare." "I know," Zhao said. "But we're not here to fight civilized. We're here to win." The virus spread quickly. Around them, Velkrath organisms began to stumble and fall. Their movements became uncoordinated. The hive-mind connection was being disrupted. It was working, but not fast enough. "We still need to reach the Queen," Korhath said, breathing heavily. The Kryn commander was covered in wounds, but he kept moving forward. "The virus will weaken her, but only killing her will end this." They fought their way deeper into the structure. The interior of the Queen's chamber was like being inside a living body. Walls made of muscle pulsed around them. The floor was soft and warm. Everything stank of organic decay and alien biology. Finally, they reached the inner sanctum. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in darkness above. And there, at the center, was the Queen. She was enormous, her body fused into the chamber itself, part creature and part building. Thousands of smaller organisms swarmed around her. tending to her needs. Her mind pressed against theirs like a physical weight, trying to crush their thoughts with sheer mental power. But Captain Zhao had prepared for this too. Every member of the boarding party wore neural dampeners, crude devices that caused painful headaches but blocked telepathic attacks. They could resist the Queen's mental assault. "Plant the charges," Zhao ordered. The humans moved forward with packages of high explosives, nuclear bombs enough to vaporize the entire structure. They began attaching them to the walls, to the floor, to the Queen's body itself. That was when Korhath fell. The Kryn commander had been hiding his wounds, pretending to be stronger than he was. Now he collapsed, blood pouring from a deep cut in his side. Two of his warriors rushed to help him, but Korhath waved them away. "Complete the mission," he gasped. "That's all that matters." But as Talara knelt beside him, something unexpected happened. The Queen's mental pressure suddenly eased. And then, impossibly, they heard a voice in their minds. Not aggressive or attacking, but tired and sad. "Why do you fight so hard?" the Queen asked. Talara's empathic senses, which she had kept locked down to avoid the Queen's assault, suddenly opened, and she felt something she never expected to feel from the enemy that had killed billions. She felt fear. "You are afraid," Talara whispered. "Of course I am afraid," the Queen replied. "I have been afraid for 1,000 years. We Velkrath are not conquerors by choice. We are refugees. We fled here from beyond your galaxy, running from something far worse than ourselves. We needed space to breed, to grow strong enough to survive. But you were already here. And you fought us." "So we fought back." Captain Zhao had frozen, her hand on the detonator for the nuclear charges. "You're saying this was all self-defense?" "At first," the Queen admitted. But fear turned to hunger. Survival became conquest. We forgot what we were running from. We became the monsters we once feared. There was a long silence in the chamber. 50 humans and 20 Kryn stood with their weapons ready, surrounded by billions of Velkrath organisms that could kill them in seconds if the Queen commanded it. But she did not. "I'm tired," the Queen said. "Tired of war, tired of killing, tired of being afraid. If you want to end me, I will not stop you. Perhaps it is better this way." Captain Zhao looked at Talara, then at Korhath, who lay bleeding on the floor. The Kryn commander's hand rested on his energy blade. He could barely move, but his eyes burned with the need for vengeance. "Detonate the charges," Korhath said. "End this. We cannot trust her." "How many times has the Velkrath asked for peace only to attack again?" "Never," Talara said quietly. "They have never asked for peace." "Not once in 30 years. She looked at the Queen, using her empathic senses to read the massive intelligence before her, and she felt truth in the Queen's words, exhaustion, regret, and something else. Hope. "There is a third option," Talara said. Captain Zhao stood in the Queen's chamber, her hand still on the detonator. Around her, the boarding party waited in tense silence. They had fought through hell to reach this moment. Many had died to get here, and now their captain hesitated. "What third option?" Zhao asked Talara. The ambassador stepped forward, closer to the massive form of the Queen. "The virus you released disrupts the hive-mind connection. What if we modified it, made it permanent? The Velkrath would survive, but they would become individuals, no longer controlled by a single queen, no longer unified in conquest." "That is a death," the Queen said, and her mental voice held sadness. "The end of everything we are. But not the end of your species," Talara replied. "Your people would live. They would think for themselves, choose for themselves. Is that not better than extinction?" Korhath tried to sit up, grimacing with pain. "You cannot trust them. Even separated, they are dangerous. They have killed too many, destroyed too many worlds. They deserve nothing but extinction." "And what makes us better than them?" Talara asked, her voice rising. "We came here ready to commit genocide, ready to murder an entire species. If we do this, if we detonate these bombs, how are we different from the monsters we fight?" "We're different because we're fighting for survival," Captain Zhao said quietly. "They invaded our galaxy. They started this war." "Because they were afraid," Talara said. "Fear made them monsters. Will fear make us monsters too?" Captain Zhao was silent for a long moment. She looked around at her crew, at the Kryn warriors, at the alien queen whose children had killed so many. Finally she spoke. "The virus can be modified. Our medical team brought the equipment to do it. But there's a problem. If we don't detonate these charges, we have no way off this planet. Our ships are destroyed. We'll die here. Then we die having made the right choice, Talara said. Korhath laughed, a bitter sound. You are willing to die for mercy? For an enemy who has shown no mercy to anyone? I am willing to die so that mercy still exists in this galaxy, Talara said. If we lose that, then the Velkrath have already won. The silence stretched. Finally, Captain Zhao made her decision. She removed her hand from the detonator and turned to her medical officer. Modify the virus. Make it permanent. We're not destroying the Queen. We're freeing her children, the Kryn warriors protested. Some of the human soldiers looked uncertain, but Captain Zhao's word was law on her ship and they obeyed. The medical team worked quickly, modifying the virus using portable equipment. It took 3 hours to complete. During that time, the Queen spoke to them. She told them of her species' true history. The Velkrath had once been peaceful, living on a world at the edge of their home galaxy. Then something came, something the Queen would not name. Something so terrible that the Velkrath fled into the void between galaxies. They had drifted for generations, barely surviving until they found this galaxy. By then, fear had changed them. They had become aggressive, paranoid, convinced that every other species was a threat. We forgot what peace felt like, the Queen said. We only remembered fear and hunger. When the modified virus was ready, Captain Zhao released it personally. She walked to the Queen and poured the liquid onto her vast body. The Queen shuddered. Around them, Velkrath organisms began to change. The coordinated movement stopped. Individuals began moving independently, looking around as if seeing their surroundings for the first time. The hive mind was breaking apart. It feels strange, the Queen whispered, her mental voice growing fainter. I can feel them slipping away. Billions of minds that were once part of me, now separate. I am alone. You are free, Talara said gently. And so are they. The Queen's last words echoed in their minds. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps this is better. Tell my children. Tell them to choose peace. Tell them to be better than I was. Then the voice was gone. The Queen still lived, but she was no longer connected to her species. She was just one individual among trillions. Captain Zhao turned to her crew. Now we wait. Either the Alliance fleet rescues us or we die here. Either way, the war is over. They waited for 2 days in the Queen's chamber, rationing their supplies, tending to Korhath's wounds. Outside, they could hear the Velkrath changing. The organized defenses fell silent. The aggressive swarms dispersed. Individuals wandered aimlessly, learning to think for themselves for the first time in their lives. On the second day, sensors detected ships approaching. Alliance vessels led by Admiral Chen's personal flagship. They had won the distraction battle and come looking for survivors. The rescue was chaotic. The Velkrath no longer attacked, but they were confused and frightened by their sudden independence. The Alliance Marines had to carefully evacuate the boarding party, while avoiding triggering defensive responses from billions of newly independent organisms. When they finally returned to the fleet, Captain Zhao transmitted her full report. What she had done, the virus, the choice to spare the Queen, everything. The response from the Alliance was immediate and divided. Some called her a hero who had ended the war without genocide. Others called her a traitor who had stolen the Alliance's rightful victory. Some demanded she be executed for using biological weapons. Others wanted her honored as the savior of the galaxy. The debate raged for months. Captain Zhao and her crew were held in honorable detention, while the Alliance Council decided their fate. Korhath, recovered from his wounds, spoke in her defense despite his initial opposition to her choice. The human did what warriors do, he said to the council. She made a hard choice in the moment of truth. She chose mercy when vengeance was easier. That takes more courage than any battle. Finally, after 3 months of deliberation, the Alliance Council reached their decision. They called Captain Zhao, Talara, and Korhath to stand before them. Council Prime Jiran spoke. Captain Zhao, you ended a war that has cost us billions of lives. But you did so using methods that violate every treaty we hold sacred. You used biological weapons. You nearly committed genocide. These are crimes. Yes, Zhao said simply. They are. However, Jiran continued, you also showed restraint when you could have chosen annihilation. You found a solution that allowed both species to survive. And because of your actions, the war is over. The Velkrath fleets have withdrawn. Their occupied worlds are being abandoned. As individuals, they no longer seek conquest. The council chamber fell silent. "We offer humanity full membership in the Galactic Alliance," Geron said. "We offer you territory, resources, and leadership positions in our military. We ask you to help us rebuild what the war destroyed." Admiral Chen's hologram appeared beside Captain Zhao. The Admiral spoke clearly. "The humans appreciate the offer. We decline. We did not fight your war to join your club. We fought because extinction is everyone's problem. We're going home, but we'll leave communication channels open. Next time the galaxy faces a threat, call us. We'll help, but we'll do it our way." Some council members looked relieved. Others looked insulted. But no one argued. 5 years passed. The galaxy slowly healed. The Velkrath, now individuals, struggled to build a new society. Some became farmers. Others became artists. A few even became philosophers, trying to understand what their species had been and what they could become. They offered reparations to the worlds they had destroyed, though they could never truly repay the damage they had done. The Alliance reformed its military doctrines. They created new training programs that taught adaptive flexibility, though everyone called it fighting like humans. They never admitted that's what it was. Captain Zhao, now Admiral Zhao, ran a joint military academy on a neutral station between human and Alliance space. She taught officers from a dozen species the lessons she had learned. "War is ugly," she told her students. "It requires you to make choices that will haunt you forever. But peace is worth fighting for, even if the fight changes who you are." On a quiet evening, Talara visited the academy. She found Admiral Zhao in her office, staring at old star charts. "I have news," Talara said. "Our deep space probes have detected something. A signal from beyond the galaxy, from the direction the Velkrath came from." Zhao looked up. "The thing they were running from?" "Perhaps," Talara said. "It could be nothing. It could be everything. We need to investigate." "And you want humans to help," Zhao said. "I want us to face it together," Talara corrected. "Human and Alliance working as partners this time, not as separate forces." Admiral Zhao stood and walked to the window. Below, she could see human and alien students training together, learning from each other. Kryn warriors sparring with human marines. Etheri scientists working alongside human engineers. Different species, different philosophies, but united by common purpose. "The human way or the Alliance way?" Zhao asked. "Both," Talara said. "We'll do it both ways. Your unpredictability and our structure. Your willingness to break rules and our wisdom to know which rules matter. Together we're stronger than either of us alone." Zhao turned and smiled. "Then I suppose we'd better start preparing. If something scared the Velkrath enough to make them flee across the void between galaxies, we're going to need every advantage we can get." "When do we leave?" Talara asked. "Soon," Zhao said. "But this time we're not sending one ship. We're sending a fleet, human and Alliance fighting side by side, and this time we'll be ready for whatever comes." Outside the window, the stars shone bright and cold. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, something waited. Something ancient. Something dangerous. But the galaxy was ready now. They had learned the lessons of the last war. They had learned to fight together, to trust each other, to combine their different strengths. They had learned the human way of war and the Alliance way of peace. And when the next threat came, they would face it as one. The war was over. But their vigilance would never end, because they had learned the most important lesson of all. Peace must always be protected, and sometimes protection requires those willing to fight in ways others will not, to make hard choices, to bear the weight of necessary evil so that others can remain innocent. That was the burden humanity had taught them, and it was a burden the galaxy now shared together.